Hi everyone, welcome back to DGMZ, Diwan-e-Ghalib, Meri. To all our returning viewers, we are very happy you could join us again. And to the new viewers, we are delighted you discovered the podcast and decided to tune in for the first time. Now, if you were with me in the previous episode, you know that currently we are going through Ghazal 25 from Diwan-e-Ghalib, Pae-Nazr-e-Karam, Tohfaa hai Sharm-e-Naa-Rasaai ka. Today we are going to pick the last couplet of this Ghazal, the Maqta of the Ghazal. As always, I am going to read the entire couplet and then we will get into the keywords, key concepts and impression. So this is how it goes. ना दे नामे को इतना तूल गालिब, ना दे नामे को इतना तूल गालिब, मुख्तसर लिख दे. ना दे नामे को इतना तूल गालिब, मुख्तसर लिख दे कि हसरत संज हूँ अर्ज़े सितम हाय जुदाई का. So let's do a quick approximate translation. First line, ना दे नामे को इतना तूल गालिब, मुख्तसर लिख दे. Don't give the letter too much length. Ghalib, write briefly, write concisely. Second line, कि हसरत संज हूँ अर्ज़े सितम हाय जुदाई का. That I am longing to be a measure of the breadth and depth of tortures of separation. So that is the approximate translation. Now this couplet has a lot of keywords. So let's get on with it. First line, first word, naame. Naame is letters. मखदूम मुहिद्दीन का ये शेर. चश्म रुखसार के अस्कार को जारी रखो, प्यार के नामे को दोहराओ कि कुछ रात कटे. The approximate translation is, keep repeating the praises of her eyes, the praises of her face. Keep repeating the recitation of the love letter so that one can get through the night. अकबर अलाहाबादी का ये शेर. ना क्यों कर बुए खूं नामे से आए, ना क्यों कर बुए खूं नामे से आए, उसी जल्लाद का लिखा हुआ है. Approximate translation is, why shouldn't the letter smell of blood? Why shouldn't the letter have smell of blood on it? After all, this letter has been drafted by that same cruel executioner, aka beloved. मिर्ज़ा गालिब का शेर. आँख की तस्वीर सरनामे पे खींची है कि ता, आँख की तस्वीर सरनामे पे खींची है कि ता, तुझ पे खुल जावे कि इसको हसरते दीदार है. Beautiful couplet. The approximate translation is, I have drawn the picture of an eye on the head of the letter so that it should be revealed to you that this letter longs to be seen. नौशाद अली का ये शेर. खूने दिल से जो लिखा था वो मिटा अश्कों से, खूने दिल से जो लिखा था वो मिटा अश्कों से, अपने ही नामे की तहरीर पे रोना आया. Beautiful couplet, just beautiful. Approximate translation is, that letter which I drafted, which I wrote with my own drops of blood was wiped away, right? Was wiped away from my own drops of tears, because the discourse or the writing of my own letter made me weep. When I read what I had written, it made me weep. So that takes care of naame. Moving on to tuul. Now tuul is length, longitude, expanse, extent of something. इस पे बेदम शाह वारसी का ये शेर, शबे फुरकत का जब कुछ तूल कम होना नहीं मुमकिन, शबे फुरकत का जब कुछ तूल कम होना नहीं मुमकिन, तो मेरी जिंदगी का मुख्तसर अफसाना हो जाए. Approximate translation is, when it is clear that it is impossible to shorten the length of the night of separation. When it is clear that it's impossible to shorten the length of the night of separation, then it is best that the length of my life story itself gets shortened. If the night is not going to get short, let the life get short so that I don't have to go through these long nights of separation again and again. जलील मनिकपुरी का ये शेर, कासिद पयामे शौक को देना बहुत न तूल, कासिद पयामे शौक को देना बहुत न तूल, कहना फ़कत ये उनसे कि आंखें तरस गई. So the approximate translation is, dear postman, dear messenger, don't elongate or lengthen the writings of my letter or the content of my message. Just say this to her, that the eyes are starved, the eyes are famished, the eyes are hungry to see her. इब्ने इंशा का ये शेर, सुन तो लिया किसी नार की खातिर, कटा को निकली नहर. This is a good one. सुन तो लिया किसी नार की खातिर, कटा को निकली नहर, एक जरा से किस्से को अब देते क्यों हो तूल मियाँ. So the approximate translation is, fine, I heard it. I got it. I heard it that for some lady there was some mountain which was cut through for some river to flow through it. I've heard it. I've heard this narration, but it's just a story. Why do people give it? Why, mister, are you giving it so much length, so much weightage, so much expanse? And of course, the sarcasm here in this Ibn Insha Sher is with reference to the famous story of Shiri and Farhad, the famous lovers, where Farhad did indeed cut a mountain, unsurmountable mountain, to make the river of milk flow through it. The whole story is covered by us in one of the ghazals. But yeah, Ibn Insha says, don't elongate the story, don't make it bigger than it is. Yeah, it's a good kissa, some lady, some mountain, some river. Let it go. I've heard it. I've heard enough of it. Now, जिगर मुरादाबादी का ये शेर, तूले गमे हयात से घबराना ए जिगर, ऐसी भी कोई शाम है जिसकी सहर ना हो. Beautiful couplet. The approximate translation is, Jigar, and the poet is referring to himself, do not be terrified of the length of this life of misery. Don't be terrified of the length of this life of misery. After all, has there ever been a dark evening that did not have a bright morning coming after it? So, be rest assured, this will get over. This life of misery will get over. So that is Tool, long, right? Moving on to Mukhtasar, short, concise, abbreviated. इस पे मोइन एहसान जज्बी का शेर, मुख्तसर ये है हमारी दास्तान ज़िंदगी, मुख्तसर ये है हमारी दास्तान ज़िंदगी, एक सुकून दिल की खातिर उम्र भर तड़पा की है. Beautiful couplet. The approximate translation is that the gist of the story of my life is this: in desire for one peaceful heart, I remained restless my entire life. For the peace of that one heart, I remained restless my entire life. इब्न इंशा का शेर, बेकरारी सही नहीं जाती, जिंदगी मुख्तसर नहीं होती. Approximate translation is, the anxiety is becoming unbearable and the life is not shortening. कुमार बाराबंकी का ये शेर, कहने को जिंदगी थी बहुत मुख्तसर मगर, कहने को जिंदगी थी बहुत मुख्तसर मगर कुछ यूं बसर हुई कि खुदा याद आ गया. Approximate translation is, on paper it was a short life, but believe me, it was a life that made me cry out to God himself. कैफी आज़मी का ये शेर, and of course from the famous movie पाकीज़ा, शबे इंतज़ार आखिर कभी होगी मुख्तसर भी, शबे इंतज़ार आखिर कभी होगी मुख्तसर भी, ये चराग बुझ रहे हैं मेरे साथ जलते जलते. The approximate translation is that this long night of waiting, this night of waiting someday will shorten, someday will end. These lamps are extinguishing as they burn along with me. And then of course the song is Chalte Chalte, right? Kahin koi mil gaya tha. Moving on to the next couplet, असरूल हक मजाज का शेर, कहाँ तक किस्साए आलम फुरकत मुख्तसर ये है, कहाँ तक किस्साए आलम फुरकत मुख्तसर ये है, यहाँ वो आ नहीं सकती वहाँ मैं जा नहीं सकता. Love the couplet. The approximate translation is, for how long should I keep telling this long story of this environment around me of separation, pain, torture, right? The short of the story is this: she cannot come here, I cannot go there. And that is the short of it. Everything lying in between is semantics. But the gist, the bookend of the story, the two bookends of the story the two bookends of the story are, she cannot come here, I cannot go there. बेदम शाह वारसी का ये शेर, हमारी जिंदगी तो मुख्तसर सी एक कहानी थी, हमारी जिंदगी तो मुख्तसर सी एक कहानी थी, भला हो मौत का जिसने बना रखा है अफसाना. The approximate translation is, the story of my life was but a very short incident. But the story of my life was a very short incident. It is the death. It is my death that has created a long story out of it. Otherwise, to begin with, story of my life was a very short incident. And this last one, Amir Minai ka, one of our favorites, वसल का दिन और इतना मुख्तसर, दिन गिने जाते थे इस दिन के लिए. The approximate translation is, the day of union and it is so short. The day of union and it is so short. This is a day for which we counted days and days and days endlessly. But now that it is here, it is so short. So that was a very long description of the word mukhtasar, which is short. No pun intended. Moving on to the second line, Hasrat Sanj. Now, Hasrat is desirous of something, desiring something. Sanj, on the other hand, is measuring something. So, इस पे उबैदुल्ला अलीम का ये शेर, मौजे नशात ओ सैले गमे जां थे एक साथ, मौजे नशात ओ सैले गमे जां थे एक साथ, गुलशन में नगमा संज अजब अंदलीब था. So, the approximate translation is that the wave of ecstasy and joy and the stream of sorrows of life were together, were flowing together. In the garden there was a strange bird, in whose song you could see the waves of ecstasy and joy and the river or streams of sorrow flow together. Beautiful couplet, beautiful. अमीर मिनाई का ये शेर, हमारे आगे ज़रा हो समझ के जमजमा संज, हमारे आगे ज़रा हो समझ के जमजमा संज कि एक नगमा सरा ए हज़ार हम भी हैं. So the approximate translation is, be careful before getting into the role of someone who is going to assess, measure, calibrate music and songs, because know that I too am a singer of 1,000 tunes, 1,000 tones, if you may. मिर्ज़ा गालिब का ये मिर्ज़ा गालिब का ये शेर, आमद बहार की है जो बुलबुल है नगमा संज, उड़ती सी एक खबर है ज़बानी तुयूर की. So the approximate translation is, the advent of spring is here because the nightingale is again fully involved in singing. This news has come flying to us about the advent of spring through the tongue of the bird. Right? Beautiful couplet. So that takes care of Nagma Sanj. Moving on to Arz. So Arz has a lot of meanings. The first one, which we use very commonly, is a petition, a request, solicitation. The other usage is for price, cost, quantity, value. Then there is another usage for width, breadth, extent, presenting something or representing something. And then the last usage is for land, earth, region, portion of land, country. इस पे फ़ज़ा इब्ने फैज़ी का ये शेर, लहू ही कितना है जो चश्मे तर से निकलेगा, लहू ही कितना है जो चश्मे तर से निकलेगा, यहाँ भी काम ना अर्ज़े हुनर से निकलेगा. So the approximate translation is, how much blood is left to begin with in my body that I would be able to cry tears of blood. And we have covered tears of blood multiple times in many ghazals. The lover does shed tears of blood because of the extreme pain and grief he feels. But in this couplet, Faza ibn Fazi says, how much blood is left to begin with in the whole body that I as a lover would be able to weep tears of blood. It seems that even for this, I will not be successful. I lack the talent to even do this. मिर्ज़ा गालिब का शेर, फिर शौक कर रहा है खरीदार की तलब, फिर शौक कर रहा है खरीदार की तलब, अर्ज़े मताए अक्लो दिलो जां किए हुए. So the approximate translation is, love once again is eager to find a customer and is offering up the wealth of heart, life and mind. So that takes care of Arz. Moving on to Sitam. Sitam translates to oppression, injustice, tyranny, cruelty. इस पे जॉन इलिया का शेर, बहुत प्यारा शेर, क्या सितम है कि अब तेरी सूरत गौर करने पे याद आती है. The approximate translation is, what a torture it is for me that now I can only remember your face if I focus very hard. There was a time I didn't have to make any effort, right? मीर तकी मीर का शेर, हमारे आगे तेरा जब किसू ने नाम लिया, हमारे आगे तेरा जब किसू ने नाम लिया, दिले सितम ज़दा को हमने थाम लिया. So the approximate translation is that whenever in front of me somebody would mention your name, on hearing your name it made my heart sink, and I supported my heart again and again, right? Your name made the heart plunge in grief, and I supported the heart again and again. आलमा इकबाल का ये शेर, ज़माने के दरिया में बहती हुई, सितम उसकी मौजों के सहती हुई. So, floating in the river of time, bearing the tortures of its waves. That is the approximate translation. And the last one, अहमद फराज का ये शेर, तुम्हें भी जिद है कि मश्क सितम रहे जारी, हमें भी नाज की जौर जफा के आदी हैं. I think we covered this. Never mind, it's a great couplet. We can always cover it again. So the approximate translation is, you, beloved, insist that the usage of torture and cruelty at your end should continue ceaselessly. And I also at my end take pride in the fact that I am able to bear any kind of cruelty and tyranny. So that takes care of all the keywords of ना दे नामे को इतना तूल गालिब मुख्तसर लिख दे कि हसरत संजू अर्ज़े सितम हाय जुदाई का. Let's get into our impression. ना दे नामे को इतना तूल गालिब मुख्तसर लिख दे. The first line of this couplet is fascinating in more than one ways. Let's explore the line with reference to the couplet first. So, the couplet is about this letter that Ghalib, by extension the lover, is drafting for the beloved. What is very endearing about the first line is how Ghalib, the lover, is almost coaching himself as he drafts the letter. For the lover, there is so much to say. There is so much to complain. There is so much to request from the beloved. This outpour of lover's heart on the paper, if it was to happen, would be almost like a flood of emotions, right? And this is where the lover needs to rein in, needs to control this outpour. He has to resist the intense, irresistible temptation to say it all, to write it all. Ghalib himself captures this irresistible temptation to write to the beloved for the sake of writing to the beloved in this couplet. खत लिखेंगे खत लिखेंगे गरचे मतलब कुछ ना हो. खत लिखेंगे गरचे मतलब कुछ ना हो, हम तो आशिक हैं तुम्हारे नाम के. The approximate translation, I will write to you even if I don't have anything to write to you, even if I don't have an objective to write to you, because after all, I am a lover of your name. And that's why I will write to you, because it will give me an opportunity to write your name, something I am in love with. Now, there is a page missing. Where is it? Where is it? Come on. Yeah. एक और शेर, खालिद नदीम शानी का. मुख्तसर वक्त में ये बात नहीं हो सकती. मुख्तसर वक्त में ये बात नहीं हो सकती. दर्द इतने हैं खुलासे में नहीं आएंगे. So the approximate translation is, this topic cannot be covered in a short frame of time. There are so many tortures, so many pains that they will not be revealed in a short span of time. They will not be revealed completely or adequately in a short frame of time. In this couplet, Ghalib is replacing the temptation of an outpour with discipline of brevity, short, something short, something brief, yet something that will communicate all Ghalib wants to say to the beloved. So he's replacing his temptation, his intense desire to say it all, with a discipline to say something very short, say something very brief. Ghalib dictates himself, Mukhtasar likhte. Ghalib dictates himself to keep it brief and not let the letter be a long-winded, descriptive one. What exactly he decides to finally put on paper, we will cover it in the second line. But for now, Ghalib makes the choice to stop or control his outpour of emotions and keep the letter very brief. Now, if you remember, this is the exact vibe we had in the I think 5th couplet, right? क्या था वो? This one. तमन्ना-ए-ज़बान महव-ए-सिपास-ए-be-zabaani है, मिटा जिससे तकाजा शिकवा-ए-बे-दस्त-o-Pai का. If you remember, in this couplet, again, Ghalib and his tongue are desirous of indulging in complaining to the beloved about all the torture and pain she's sending the lover's way. But then the lover controls this urge to speak up and replaces it with the discipline of silence and doesn't speak up, for which later he is thankful that he did. So in that couplet, it was about controlling the spoken word. And now in this couplet, it is about controlling the written word. Don't say too much. Don't say too much. Na de naame ko itna tuul Ghalib. Don't make it long. Mukhtasar likh de. Keep it short. Now, as we mentioned in the beginning, the first line has more than one fascinating aspects to it. So one aspect is what we covered, Ghalib as a lover disciplining himself to keep the letter brief, to not let the outpour of emotions transfer to the paper. Now, the second aspect is specifically focused on Mukhtasar likhte. Keep it brief. Ghalib the lover will definitely find it tough to keep his letter brief because of his emotions. What about Ghalib the poet? By extension, how does keep it brief, Mukhtasar likhte, play out in the world of poetry? That is the second aspect we want to explore. Now, when we were doing our research, we came across information that confirmed that there is a form of poetry called brevity poem. What is a brevity poem? It is a compelling poem in brevity that captures a moment's essence with precision and economy of words. It distills emotions, observations, insights into a very concise form, amplifying their impact through understatement and suggestion. Some of the greatest examples of brevity in poetry are found in the hymns of Christian faith. For example, Amazing Grace by John Newton, Joyful, Joyful, We Adore Thee by Henry Van Dyke. Also, the same meaningful brevity is evident in the Bible. It is part of the book of Psalms and other poetic books of the Bible. Now, moving to the poetry per se, let's cover English poetry and how brevity plays out in English poetry. There are poets who wrote in English and are most recognized for their concise and impactful writing style, leveraging brevity. Emily Dickinson, renowned for her short, often unconventional poems with dashes and unique phrasing, capturing complex emotions in a few lines. Ernest Hemingway. While primarily a novelist, his prose style is famous for simplicity and directness, utilizing minimal language to convey powerful emotions. Robert Frost often used simple language and imagery in his poems, creating a sense of immediacy and relatable themes. And just to cement this brevity poem or concept of brevity in English poetry, let's go through some examples. So this first one is by Emily Dickinson. The poem is titled, I Am Nobody, Who Are You? And this is how it goes. I am nobody, who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us. Don't tell, they'd banish us, you know. How dreary to be somebody. How public, like a frog. To tell your name the livelong day to an admiring hog. Here is another one. This poem is titled Incident, and it is written by County Cullen, and this is how it goes. Once riding in old Baltimore, heart filled, head filled with glee, I saw a Baltimorean keep looking straight at me. Now I was 8 and very small, and he was no whit bigger, and so I smiled, but he poked out his tongue and called me nigger. I saw the whole of Baltimore from May until December. Of all the things that happened there, that's all that I remember. And this last example by William Wordsworth. The title of the poem is She Dwelt Among the Untrodden Ways. And this is how it goes. She dwelt among the untrodden ways, beside the springs of Dove, a maid whom there were none to praise, and very few to love. A violet by a mossy stone, half hidden from the eye, fair as a star when only one is shining in the sky. She lived unknown, and few could know when Lucy ceased to be. But she is in her grave, and oh, the difference to me. So some of those famous English poems by famous poets where you see meaningful brevity in full display. So that was English poetry. Moving on to Hindi poetry, or poets who wrote in Hindi language. And one name that immediately comes to mind is Bihari Lal. Bihari Lal is hailed as the master of Gagar Mein Sagar, which translates to an ocean in a pitcher. Figuratively, it means the impossibility of fitting a vast amount of something into a tiny container, and he was hailed as an expert at that. Bihari Lal in his early life studied ancient Sanskrit texts, later shifted to Mathura, where he met Shah Jahan, Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan, who got impressed by his works, invited him to stay in Agra. At Agra, Bihari Lal learnt Persian language. How interesting, right? Sanskrit, Persian, what a combo. Learned Persian language and came into contact with Rahim, another famous poet. Also at Agra, Raja Jai Singh I of Amber near Jaipur heard Bihari Lal, invited him over to Jaipur, and this is where Bihari Lal created his most famous work called Satsai. Now we will go through some of his dohas just to see the cryptic almost brevity, right, and the deep meaning. So ye pehla doha. Satsaiya ke dohe, जू नाविक के तीर, देखन में छोटे लगे घाव करे गंभीर. The approximate translation is that Sat Sayya, and the poet is referring to his collection of works, right? The couplets of Sat Sayya are like the arrows shot by a hunter. They look very small, but they wound very deeply. They hit very deep. They penetrate very deep. Another doha. Kahat natat rijhat khijat, milat khilat lajiat, bhare bhavan mein karat hai, nainan hi se baat. So the approximate translation is, she agrees, then she disagrees, and then she gets irritated and angry, and then our eyes interlock, she smiles, but then she shies away. And this is how, in an auditorium full of people, she's having a conversation with me with her eyes. इस दोहे को पढ़ के वो शेख इब्राहिम ज़ौक़ का शेर याद आ गया, राइट? मस्जिद में उसने हमको आंखें दिखा के मारा, काफिर की शोखी देखो घर में खुदा के मारा. So the approximate translation of that couplet is that she killed me in the mosque by her glances. Look at the cheekiness of this infidel, that she dared to kill me in the house of God. Back to Bihari Lal. Here is another one from him. Batras lalach lal ki murli dhari lukaye, सौ करे भौने हंसे दैन कहे नटी जाए. The approximate translation is that and the scenario is of Krishna and gopis, right? So the scenario is that, and the translation is that in their greed, in their desire to listen to Krishna speak and talk to them some more, the gopis hide Krishna's flute. When asked by Krishna about the flute, they swear to him they have nothing to do with the flute. They don't know anything about the flute. But the arching of their eyebrows gives them away. They then say that, okay, fine, we will give it back to you, but then again deny giving it back to him. So just 2 lines, again for about 10, 13, 15 words, and a whole description of this back and forth going between Krishna and gopis. And then this last one from Bihari Lal. Meri bhav badha haro, radha nagri soi, jatan ki jhai pare, shamu hare duti hoi. So the approximate translation is, I want the pain and torture from that very same Radha whose shadow turns Krishna into green, or turns Krishna's color to green. And once you get into the impression of the doha, the fact of the matter is that Radha was the fair one with a almost gold-like countenance. Krishna, on the other hand, was a blue countenance person. He was blue all over, right? And the force of habit. The doha here captures the fact when the golden countenance of Radha falls as a shadow on the blue body of Krishna, Krishna turns green. Blue and yellow, when mixed, makes green. So can you even imagine, right? Gagar mein sagar, can you even imagine the description, the vividness, the visual in just 2 lines? So Bihari Lal, for his dohas, shows these masterful characteristics. Number 1, ability to narrate the whole story in 2-lined doha. Number 2, incorporating unlimited possible meanings in a single doha. Number 3, ability to say a lot using very few words. Number 4, Bihari Lal was a poet famous for Shringar, which is beauty, Bhakti, which is devotion, Niti, which is guidance. As a DGMZ viewer, do these characteristics of Bihari Lal's poetry sound familiar to you? They should. They should. And that brings us to our last milestone of exploring brevity in poetry. And the last milestone is, of course, Urdu poetry. How does brevity in poetry play out in Urdu poetry? Who else would come to mind other than one and only Mirza Asadullah Khan Ghalib? Mukhtasar likh de. Ghalib almost has defined himself in these three words. In addition to his role as the lover, Ghalib weaves in the par excellence poet in him. When he urges himself, Mukhtasar likh de. As a Ghalib fan, as a Ghalib die-hard fan, let me be clear, as a Ghalib die-hard fan, all you can do is smile when he says, Mukhtasar likh de. Coaching, teaching, requesting, urging himself to be brief. It makes you smile. Who is more brief than Ghalib? Who is more a master of brevity than Ghalib? Ghalib doesn't have to tell himself to be brief. That is his claim to fame. But in the couplet he says, Ghalib Mukhtasar likh de. And when you read that, it almost seems as if you are seeing Einstein telling himself to check his calculations, or Van Gogh telling himself to mix the colors correctly, or Beethoven telling himself to stay in tune. These people don't have to tell themselves about these things. Color, tune, music, prose, words, they breathe it every moment of their living life, right? But Ghalib very cutely, I would say, says Ghalib Mukhtasar likh de. It is, in my humble opinion, one of the most funny things I've read in the Diwan so far. As DGMC viewers, we spend every week 1 hour only to narrate the impression of the two-line couplet. Forget about the research that is done for it. Right? Who would know it better than us, the meaningful brevity of Ghalib's poetry? How he, in every word complex, in every line, in every couplet, creates multiple levels, multiple depths of meaning. And to see him tell himself in this couplet, Ghalib Mukhtasar likh de, it's like preaching to the choir, right? I mean, of course Ghalib Mukhtasar लिखेगा, और कैसे लिखेगा? वो ऐसे ही लिखता है, उससे अच्छा कोई लिख नहीं सकता मुख्तसर. But he says, Ghalib Mukhtasar likh de. Brevity in poetry is not about less words, right? Brevity in poetry is about more, much more, impossibly more, captured in less words. The information is not compromised on. The depth of meaning is not compromised on. It is just that it is captured. It is captured in few words. Now, Ghalib is not alone in this exclusive club of poets who have mastered meaningful brevity in poetry. But he sure is one of the best, if not the best, in this club. गालिब का ही शेर, वो बदखू और मेरी दास्ताने इश्क तुलानी, वो बदखू और मेरी दास्ताने इश्क तुलानी, इबारत मुख्तसर कासिद भी घबरा जाए है मुझसे. Let's try that again. गालिब का ही शेर, वो बदखू और मेरी दास्ताने इश्क तुलानी, whatever. गालिब का शेर, वो बदखू और मेरी दास्ताने इश्क तुलानी, इबारत मुख्तसर कासिद भी घबरा जाए है मुझसे. The approximate translation is, she is short-tempered and impatient. I have a very lengthy tale of love. Hence, the messenger almost quakes in his boots to tell me to keep it brief, because he knows the flood of emotions I have inside of me, how difficult or impossible it is for me to keep it brief. But he also knows that the beloved is very impatient. So if I don't keep it brief, she is going to get angry. So the poor messenger is kind of caught between Dastane-Ishq Tulani and Badkhoo. मोहम्मद रफ़ी सौदा का ये शेर, सौदा खुदा के वास्ते कर किस्सा मुख्तसर, सौदा खुदा के वास्ते कर किस्सा मुख्तसर, अपनी तो नींद उड़ गई तेरे फसाने में. The approximate translation is Sauda, and the poet is referring to himself. Sauda, for God's sake, cut it short. Sauda, for God's sake, cut it short. We are losing our sleep listening to this long-winded tale of yours. So that takes care of the first line. Na de naame ko itna tuul Ghalib Mukhtasar likh de. Not only covering the line with reference to the couplet, but also taking the opportunity to focus on Mukhtasar likh de, how it plays out in the world of poetry, not just Urdu poetry, English poetry, Hindi poetry. It's a one of its kind talent. You can be a good poet, but that doesn't necessarily mean you are a master of brevity, meaningful brevity. Only few poets master that aspect, and Ghalib definitely is one of the top few. Moving on to the second line, कि हसरत संज हूँ अर्ज़े सितम हाय जुदाई का. After all the talk about meaningful brevity, it's time for the rubber to meet the road. How does one capture a sea of pain and emotion and love in a single line? Because Ghalib has already used the first line and he has still not come to the message, right? In the first line, he is just coaching and guiding himself. Don't lengthen it, keep it short. So he just has one line now to capture the message. What out of million things a lover wants to say to the beloved will make the cut and be chosen in this second line. Simply put, which words, which emotions, which representation of these words and emotions does Ghalib choose? So this is what he chooses. Hasrat Sanj. Hasrat is desire, Sanj is measure. Therefore, I desire to measure. I yearn to weigh. I want to assess. Moving on to Ars. Now, in full disclosure, and yes, we love to share with our viewers when we make mistakes and how we identify those mistakes and correct them. So, with Ars, we think we made a mistake because initially we thought that Ars was that common usage, right? Requesting something, petitioning something, soliciting something, right? Kuch request karna. But then as we kept getting deeper into the research, we realized that probably that is not the meaning of Ars which fits in this couplet. The meaning of Ars that fits in this couplet is probably something else. The meaning is width, breadth, dimension. We covered it in the keywords. Ars also means width, breadth, dimensions of something. And a childhood memory also helped to cement this. I remember shopping for fabric, right? And the person who was selling it to us was talking in this lingo. भाई अर्ज के हिसाब से दे दो, कितने अर्ज का काट दें. So that kind of clicked and made me realize that here probably the usage of Ars is about dimension. It is about measuring. It is about the width, the breadth of something. It was a turning point for our impression at least. Otherwise पूरे का पूरा impression जो था वो अर्जियाँ सारी जैसा बन जाता था, right? Because that was our initial understanding. But later on, realized that probably Ars in this couplet is width, breadth, expanse, dimension of a thing. At least in TGMC's humble opinion. Moving on to Sitam Hai Judai Ka. So what does the lover want to Hasrat-e-Sanj, right? What does the lover desire to measure? The breadth of, the dimension of, the expanse of. Well, Sitam Hai Judai. Right? The torture of separation. The lover wants to assess the extent, the expanse, the dimensions of the tortures that separation from the beloved brings. Now, torture of separation from the beloved, that is a full-time activity for the lover, right? That is a full-time activity for the lover, at least in Urdu poetry. Since the torture or sitam from the beloved's end never stops, the assessing and bearing of that torture and sitam at the lover's end also never stops. It is continuous. इस पे जॉन इलिया का ये शेर, सारी दुनिया के गम हमारे हैं और सितम ये कि हम तुम्हारे हैं. So the approximate translation is, all the griefs and pains of the world belong to me, but the torturous fact is that I belong to you. कलीम आजिज का ये शेर, दिन एक सितम रात करो हो. दिन एक सितम रात करो हो, वो दोस्त हो, दुश्मन को भी तुम मात करो हो. Approximate translation is, one torture in the day and then another torture in the night is what you do. You, my beloved, is a friend who beats the enemy at his game of animosity. आप जैसा दोस्त हो तो फिर दुश्मन की क्या ज़रूरत है, राइट? अहमद फराज का ये शेर, तुम्हें भी ज़िद कि मश्क सितम रहे जारी. I think we have covered this. We have covered this couplet. We are going to skip this. So, it's almost as if Ghalib is saying to the beloved, beloved, don't want to say much except that your lover desires to be a measurer of the breadth and depth of torture of separation. Day in, day out, beloved, all I want to do is continuously keep tracking, keep measuring these tortures, these pains, these wounds created by separation from you. Ghalib Ghalib discards the usual, उस दिन नहीं मिले तो बड़ा बुरा लगा and उस दिन तुम उससे मिले तो, no. He cuts all that. All he says is, every day, every night, every moment, continuously without stopping, all I desire to do is measure and assess the expanse and dimensions of these tortures that keep coming my way because of our separation. And style देखिए, right? Sanj and Urs. Sanj is measurer of something, assessor of something, weigher of something, right? Urs, like we discussed, is dimensions of something. So Sanj and Urs bring the analytical, mathematical, quantifiable quality to the second line. And Hasrat and Sitam Hai Judai brings the lyrical, emotional, surreal quality to the second line. It is a very difficult mix. It's a very difficult tightrope to walk on. It is a very difficult balance to strike. But Ghalib strikes it, right? He says, I am desirous of continuously assessing and measuring uncontrollable, unmeasurable torture caused by separation. This has a beautiful, paradoxical, poignant reality to it, right? Ghalib, on one hand, is talking about the unlimited, unmeasurable torture, and on the other hand, is talking about his desire to still measure it, to still try to quantify it. This is a plan doomed to fail, because the lover themselves will vouch for the fact that this pain is endless, this misery, this grief of separation, there is no measure to it. Unmeasurable, unbearable. But here Ghalib says, beloved, all I want to do is measure it, quantify it. Doing something that's doomed to fail right from the word go, but still doing it because you are desirous to do it, because you desire to do it. I would say helplessly, hopelessly desire to do it. That is the exact definition of the lover in Urdu poetry. For the lover in Urdu poetry, the desire to do it takes priority over everything. For the lover, it is not really important whether if I embark on this plan, will it be successful? If I try to win her heart. Will I be successful? Will I fail? Doesn't matter. The desire to try is priority. फिराक गोरखपुरी का ये शेर, रोने को तो जिंदगी पड़ी है, कुछ तेरे सितम पे मुस्कुरा ले. Approximate translation is, there's a lifetime to shed tears. For now, I want to focus on smiles that your torture brings to me. फैज़ अहमद फैज़ का ये शेर, सितम पे खुश, कभी लुत्फ़ व करम से रंजीदा. सितम पे खुश, कभी लुत्फ़ व करम से रंजीदा, सिखाई तुमने हमें कज अदाएं क्या क्या. Approximate translation is, delighted when tortured, and depressed and sad when treated well. Beloved, you have taught me twisted ways of being, twisted graces, contorted manners, right, of being. If all the beloved is going to send the lover's way is this torture of separation, then that will become the focus for the lover, the desire for the lover, almost a profession, vocation for the lover. गालिबी का शेर, गो में रहा रहना सितम हाय रोजगार, लेकिन तेरे ख्याल से गाफिल नहीं रहा. Approximate translation is, though I was totally pledged, submerged from head to foot in the earnings of livelihood, etc., right? But never ever, even for a moment, was I ignorant to your thought, to your memory. So yes, I was working and doing a job, but you, I engaged in even more than that. It's a full-time job. Sitam is a full-time job. Sitam karna, full-time job for the beloved. Sitam sehna, full-time job for the lover. The only other thing, and we are coming to the end of the impression, the only other thing that we wondered about when we were creating the impression was, why, right? Why did Ghalib choose that? Why desirous of quantifying the pain, the torture, separation from the beloved causes? Why? What was the big deal? Why choose that? And we can speculate. The couplet doesn't give us any hints on that. This is what we speculate with reference to that question. When something is undefined, unmeasured, not quantified, it does seem a little more overwhelming. Once you put a number to it, once you put some kind of sense to it, once you put some type of quantity to it, right, it probably just becomes a little more bearable. Is this why the lover wants to continuously try to measure and gauge the type of pain and torture that is coming his way because of this separation? Maybe the lover thinks that if he can in some way quantify or make some kind of guess estimate of the pain, it will just make him a little more able to deal with it. That's what came to our mind as to why did he choose to do it. Let us know if you have any thoughts on it. We scratched our brains and that's what we could come up with. Well, that brings us to the end of Na de naame ko itna tuul Ghalib Mukhtasar likh de ki hasrat sanjhu arze sitam haye judai ka. That not only finishes the couplet, it finishes the Ghazal for us. So that today we complete Ghazal 25 from Diwan-e-Ghalib. What that means is, next time we pick up Ghazal 26 from Diwan-e-Ghalib. Also a reminder, we are starting a new initiative at DGMZ called DGMZ Bites. I know we have never posted short videos or YouTube shorts so far on the channel. It was the first time we did it, I think a day or two back, to let you know that DGMZ Bites is on its way. If you do not check the shorts tab in YouTube for DGMZ channel, I would request you to start checking that, because these DGMZ Bites will be under that tab. These bites will not be part of your original list of videos, right? So you will have to go into Shorts tab to access these DGMC bites. We are very excited about it. Give us a few days to finalize it and start posting them, and then we will be keen to hear your feedback on it. Now, as always, for the new viewers, a strong recommendation: please go through the episode titled Introduction to DGMC, because it will give you a good insight into the motivation, inspiration behind this podcast. The homepage of the channel has a lot of playlists segregated by topics, by ghazals. Surf through them and pick the episode that interests you. Now, I'm going to end by sending a lot of love and light to all you dear viewers, and thanks for watching.